Hey, good evening, everybody. Welcome out to tonight's weekly webinar for all of the members of Tax Sale Support. We appreciate you joining us tonight. We have members probably joining us from all different parts of the country tonight, and we're always happy to have you. Let me get that thing started. Oh, there we go. Okay, there we go. Looks like the audience view is working correctly. We're recording. I think we're all good to go.
Yeah, well, we want to welcome you guys to tonight's weekly training. As most of you guys know, we do these each Wednesday at 6 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. And each week we try to cover a new topic that's important or can be beneficial to our members. And we want to welcome everyone back that's been attending with us for a while. And we want to welcome any new members that this is your first time attending.
Yeah. Now, on topics tonight, we're going to talk a little bit about over-the-counter investing opportunities, and yeah, I think that the reality, really, if we're looking at it, over-the-counter investing plays a pretty important role when it comes to tax lien and tax deed investing. At least it is one of the very few ways, really. It's one of only two ways that you can really buy.
Yeah.
There are really, you either have public auction or over the counter as your two, real buying methods for I think for tax liens and deeds. And so, between those, you're going to have to, I guess, pick, which method you're going to go about. But, for some people and for some properties, it might be public auction. That can work as both an on-site auction or online, but the over-the-counter gives you that ability to be able to buy outside of a time frame, and with your own, I think based on your own schedule. I think it's something that that's alluring or attractive to people. Some of the advantages, but a lot of people are not really sure about over-the-counter in general, I think, and so we wanted to cover it in depth and help everybody understand exactly what we're looking for, where we can look, and how and why it works.
Yeah, exactly. So over the counter, it's a term used for tax liens, tax deeds, redemption deeds that can be purchased directly from the county or from the state after the tax sale has been held.
Yeah, it works with both tax liens and deeds. It's not available in all states. Some states, instead just choose to offer properties multiple times, or they'll have multiple resales. So how exactly are the over-the-counter liens created? Well, it all starts with the standard tax sale, and essentially tax liens or deeds that don't sell at the auction end up going, into the county inventory or back into the county inventory in a way. And so, really something else to consider as well is that county tax sales vary pretty widely in experience and auction success. In other words, your experience attending different auctions is going to vary quite a bit from place to place, and their success at conducting their own tax sales varies quite a bit from place to place. They don't all just operate smoothly. I think some of them struggle a lot more than others do. Some of them are small counties with less demands, but either way, there are a lot of things that can lead to a county holding an auction and having stuff left over.
Yeah, not only can a county struggle with advertising their tax sale or properly letting the public know or getting investors out to it, but it's also going to be affected by the investors there within the area and how many people actually attend the auction.
Yeah,
and how many real estate investors know about it and are interested in it and are update on it and know how to actually do it. And so when you're looking, especially when you're looking at a live auction, the only if it's an online auction, then anyone in the country can bid on it, and so that's going to increase the exposure. But if it's a live auction, really the exposure is going to be limited to the people within that community, and so there could be a big turnout or there could be a small turnout, and that's kind of why we have over the counters, is because for whatever reason, not all the properties got sold, but it doesn't mean that they're junk.
Yeah, these are all reasons why and this is from our own personal observations, reasons why some counties fail to sell liens or deeds at the auction. So things that we witnessed or found, it's just some of the reasons. Poor turnout for the tax sale, meaning, that they just don't have a lot of people that show up for it. And there can be other reasons for that, but really, the equation though in the end is that you just basically have more liens and and deeds than you have bidders, and that's a problem that a lot of counties run into.
Yeah, well, even in the state law, sometimes they'll be written in state law what they're supposed to do, and they're supposed to post it in the newspaper and send out notices to the property owners, and that's it, and that's all they do.
Yeah, and that's all they've been doing for the last 80 or 100 years. In a lot of cases, it's kind of bizarre, but that's basically what they do. In fact, I say poor advertising and sales skills, but that's because the county is not a sales organization. They're not, they're not they don't have that mindset. There's not really how they work. I mean, they certainly know how to collect property taxes and do this, but they're not a sales-based organization. And so the individuals that are performing this stuff are not salespeople. This is just another responsibility of theirs. That's part of the reason why I think it is. But then a lot of times, though, they're also in a way kind of a slave to state laws in a lot of cases where they don't feel like, where they can't break away from that, which causes them to be somewhat difficult, because they're trying to stick with it. We've seen that before. Location can be a big problem. There are a lot of counties that are just not close to any, like some of the bigger cities you might think of, or airports and things like that, where it just takes time to get out there, and because of that, it's going to limit the number of investors that they that they draw out or attract if it's live auctions.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, let's say that there's a county having an auction, they have 100 properties for sale, but within that county they have 5 or 10 people show up, that don't have the money to buy all of those 100 properties. There's automatically going to be some that slip through the cracks.
Yeah.
There is going to be junk land, essentially. There's going to be a ton of junk land within there, but within that junk land is going to be opportunity as well.
Yeah. State laws or county practices that kill profitability is a big one. And that's where, something like a state law or something dumb that a county is doing is just making it impossible to, to be able to buy property profitably there. And you run into that sometimes, and all you can really do is move on if you can't get it fixed. If it's something that you can't do something better than.
And one example would be is there's lots of states out there that have over-the-counter property that the property is actually good. Maybe it's a $10 or $15 or $20,000 building lot, but the problem with the property is because it's been on the books so long, the property owes, $10 or $15 or $20,000 worth of bad taxes.
Yeah, which county should never allow properties to sit on the books for that long.
Yeah.
Because it creates a problem, especially if they're a county that is going to demand, the taxes owed, because they're just sitting on it, making it less and less attractive. But, really with the bottom line with over-the-counter properties is, if you remember how this whole system works, not collecting property taxes or even a percentage of property taxes is just not an option for them. Okay. There are simply, oh God, I must have these things popping up all over because I was copying and pasting them, and so I didn't realize that there were things attached to it, so they just popping up here. So just to stop for a second, because we rarely ever really talk about the property tax cycle and just what a big deal it is to for counties. But when it comes to revenue sources, counties really only have property tax revenue in a lot of cases. It is their source of revenue. And on top of that, counties have a lot of services that they're providing that have constant and ongoing expenses, and they're not the kind of services that you can opt to, not have. And we're talking about general public safety. We're talking about, all the courts,
Yeah, in
criminal
fact,
courts,
most
jails.
yeah most of our government services that we use are going to be paid for through the county government.
Yeah.
Of course, state provides things, federal provides things, but the things that we actually use, the police force, the fire department, schools, courts, traffic, anything like that within the city is going to be done through the county tax sale system.
All right. Oh, hold on. See, it looks like we're getting some questions here. Let me see if I can get up here to answer those. Awesome. We really are happy to have you. It's interesting. Because I think what Gerald is saying is true for a lot of people. He's saying, he's had people tell him not to bother with the over-the-counter because there's always a reason they didn't get purchased, especially the $100 over-the-counter deeds. And he's wondering if we would agree. And then he's wondering if there are any $100 deeds that are good properties. And that's actually a great question because really there are a lot. And in fact, that's what we love to find is that perfect combination of a property that we can pick up for practically free that has, real world value. And, that's our favorite thing to go after. Are those types of properties. In fact, we'll show you in a minute how we can find properties like that. But when it comes to the property tax cycle, though, that whole system, another thing you have to consider is that the exact amount you pay in property taxes is a calculated amount that's based on the annual property tax rate. That's based on a whole lot of calculations intended to allow them to reach a certain budget.
Yeah.
And therefore, them not selling a bunch of liens or deeds is not just a failure of a sale. It can ultimately, lead to financial ruin for these counties if they don't get their problem under control. Because what ends up happening is if they can't cover that up front, they have to start borrowing the money to cover their expenses, and that starts adding, that just ends up costing them more money. Plus, they still have the ongoing property problem that they still haven't solved. So, counties are wising up, I think, and I think we're seeing this, especially over the last 5 years.
Yeah, we've seen more and more different states that are becoming smarter about their tax sale system. Arizona, for example, sells tax liens, but what we've seen over the last few years is they have a bunch of these tax liens that don't get purchased by investors and they end up sitting on them. And so what they're starting to do is instead of letting those tax liens sit up for 20 years worth of back taxes, they're starting to foreclose on these liens, right after the redemption period. That way, instead of having, a $10,000 building lot that's somewhere,
well, instead of 10 years worth of taxes.
Yeah, where there's, this $10,000 lot has $8,000 worth of back taxes. They're foreclosing on them at 2 or 3 years, where this $10,000 lot maybe is $800 in back taxes. And then they're offering these properties up either through over the counter or through some type of deed auction. We've seen the same thing happen in Mississippi. We've seen opportunities in Pennsylvania, where you can do $250 offers or $500 offers. In Michigan, where they have the resale starting at $100 or the over-the-counter opportunities there. So there's a ton of opportunities out there, regardless if you're looking for tax lien or tax deed. It's just a matter of filtering through the properties that are junk.
Yeah, in fact, I think that in fact, this really gets it right into kind of the heart of the question, that we're looking at, right here. Common question we get is, some people are under the impression that over-the-counter liens and deeds are just leftovers. The reality of that is, this is true. It's not about changing the facts here. It's about kind of changing, I think, your perception of it, because the reality is, sure, a lot of the great tax sale properties are going to sell at the auction, but however, we're not worried about junk land. we can sift through, we can sift out junk land. We can spot junk land, we can snip it out because it's easy to spot usually. Junk land sticks out like a sore thumb. Okay.
And the value represents it as well most of the time.
Yeah. I mean, you could look at just one part of it and a lot of times be able to determine what it is, but it sticks out like a sore thumb. So we're not worried about the junk land because we can sift through that. What we're really interested in is what the numbers tell us, and that is, what are the prices we're going to pick up for, and, what is the profitability and what are the value, real world value, on these properties. Because what we're trying to determine a lot of times is okay, what's the market value, of this item here? Okay, let's see, what would be 50, at 50% of that, we think we could sell this property, and that's, what we're looking at a lot of times is trying to figure out the wholesale pricing and about where we want to land in at wholesale pricing. If our property's valuable enough, though, we just take it right through.
And also, what are we paying for it versus the market value or the assessed value? So we'll kind of determine what the assessed value is, but then from there, we'll also determine the market value. And once we've determined the market value, then we can figure out what that bid amount is, or the offer amount, or the back taxes amount, and see what type of percentage it is. So if we're looking at a $10,000 lot and it's $1,000 in back taxes, we're essentially looking at paying 10 cents on the dollar. And if we wanted to wholesale it at 50 cents on the dollar, we could essentially make 40 cents of the property's market value. So we would maybe list it for 5,000 and we would make 4,000.
Yeah, I think part of the trick with over-the-counter investing is, I think, is to have proper expectations of it. In the beginning, one of the big problems that I think that we were having all the time was with tax liens. It was the expectation people had. They didn't quite understand how it worked, and so they weren't always, associating the right thing. They would think, I want property, and then they think
I want $250,000 home with a white picket fence.
Yeah.
And
the
best neighborhoods, and
there was this disconnect there, and it was because they were coming into it with this preconceived idea of what was good and what was bad. But with over-the-counter lists, though, the reality is they work best for certain types of property. They don't necessarily work great for everything, but at the same time, they do offer a lot of benefits, like being very flexible and being very cheap, and a lot of these things. And so if you are, let's say that you're going for a property with improvements, you might not just, you could probably find improved properties in some of the over-the-counter lists, and it's cool. It's cool if you can find. Oh yeah, with tax liens you totally can. But if you are looking for an improved property, you should probably also be looking at the auctions that are happening in that area, and trying to land something there, land something through one of the auctions, and then maybe trying to pick up over-the-counter stuff as it comes along. But it basically just requires a little bit different approach, and you can approach properties differently. In other words, you can target your properties with improvements, but when it comes to raw land and over-the-counter lists are like bread and butter. They always go together, and we love that because we love the raw land, and it gets overlooked. It's excessively, included in these over-the-counter lists. You find it all over, and the prices a lot of times are good as long as the property works.
Yeah, and not only tax deeds, which is kind of the focus that we're putting on, but also with tax liens. All we're looking for is value. So, if we're buying tax liens or tax deeds, and the property has a good value versus what we're paying, then it's going to be a no-brainer. And when it comes to really the advantage, there's a huge advantage to over-the-counters because we don't have to attend the auction. We're not on the time straight of trying to prepare for the auction. We have the ability to essentially sit back, research the list on our own time, and find properties that fit our objectives.
Well, and pay the minimum price for them,
Yeah.
so we can pay the absolute minimum price.
Or getting the highest interest rate.
Yeah, or if it's a tax lien, we're going to automatically earn the state's maximum interest rate return. We also have the time since the auction has passed that is elapsed into the redemption period. So when the property was offered at auction, the redemption period for it still began. So that time has been ticking away as it sat in the inventory. And so in some places there's also a pretty big selection of over-the-counter properties, tax liens and deeds. So I think there are a lot of advantages with all of those benefits added to it.
And there's a lot of over-the-counter states too that we don't really think about, or that investors aren't really focusing on. Example would be tax lien investing. There's tons of people that are looking in Florida and places like that, but maybe a place like Nebraska, that maybe offers a little bit lower interest rate. You're looking 14% instead of 18%, but you're still getting a good interest rate. And in a state like that, you have the foreclosure ability. So you're going to have to pay to do the foreclosure, get an attorney, but you get the property.
Yeah.
And any cost that you put toward the foreclosure gets redeemed. The property owner has to pay you back that as well when they redeem their
totally lien. Different than buying liens in Florida, where you have practically almost no chance of actually getting the property. It's going to redeem one way or another.
Yeah.
Almost,
And we're just starting to go through and contact the counties again because they just had their sale last month and they don't quite have all their lists ready, and getting some of those in Nebraska. But we're the only ones that are contacting a lot of these people, getting these lists, and there's very few that are even researching them or buying properties there. So that's just one kind of example in one state where there's these type of things in many different states. You can go into the website and see all of these different over-the-counter states that are available.
You can find all different types of properties really on an over-the-counter list. I think the stuff that you're going to target and avoid is going to be the same as usual. Useless land is still going to be the biggest risk, so we want to weed out the stuff that is the irregular shaped, small lots. Anything under a tenth is definitely too small, and beyond that it's got to be accessible from a public road. We also if it's zoned as something like residential, we want to make sure that it's big enough to be able to be used for that purpose. And beyond that, I think we're just about targeting stuff that has potential use.
Yeah.
If it's tax liens, I guess we're trying to avoid ones that have a lot of roll up. And roll up really, I guess exists everywhere, but it isn't the same concept necessarily everywhere. Like roll up in Florida can mean crazy amounts of underwater property taxes.
Roll up in the past in Arizona too, could mean 20 years.
Yeah.
Worth of essentially back taxes, and every one of those tax liens is earning 16% or whatever each month, and so that just amount increases up.
Yeah, it gets to be ridiculous.
Really when it comes to that though, when we're looking for land, as long as it has use and value, and we're looking for structures, it's all about condition.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, true.
If it's a structure, what we want to avoid properties that are in bad condition. And that's the reason we always stress, we say it all the time, probably to where it gets annoying. If you're doing structured property, you either need to visit yourself or you need to have an on-site evaluation done, taken current photos.
Yeah. It's the only, that outside evaluation is all you have to go on. It's not a normal type of real estate experience.
No, you're not going to be sending in your inspector to take do an inspection before you buying the property.
Yeah.
You're buying it from what you can see through a photo.
Yeah, there's a reason these things are so cheap. But it's really the biggest reason though is because the county doesn't have a personal interest in how much they sell for. Once the opening bid is achieved, the county has already achieved everything that's owed to them, and so literally it does not matter what it sells for. Depending on where you're at, you're going to have to know the specific terms for over-the-counter properties because it changes from state to state.
It'll make it a lot easier trying to find information about that, the the
if you know what the
properties were.
terminology is, it makes it a lot easier when you're doing things like keyword searches for lists within that county, because if you know what a county's term is, so for instance in Texas they say struck off for their over-the-counter list. So if you type in keyword searches for Texas counties with the term struck off list, you can find stuff there, whereas if you were to type in a lot of other searches, it would be a lot more difficult.
Yeah, repository is kind of the same thing in Pennsylvania, and like if we were looking for tax deeds in South Carolina or even liens, we would look for, from the Forfeited Land Commission. There's going to be a bunch of different names for it. Now, one thing we have done is we've usually posted the name or the most common used name within the state profile guides on the website. So that should at least give you an idea of what name is being used and also what department will handle the tax sale.
Yeah, in fact, just talking about the over-the-counter liens.
These are some Nebraska ones I pulled up from last year's sale.
Yeah.
These were over-the-counters.
Well, and the difference between 14% and 18%, honestly, is not that big of a deal, considering the abundance of opportunities and how much less competition.
Anything over 10% is, to me, is considered a pretty good return. You're looking at a double-digit return.
Mm-hmm.
And even if you were to try to bid on these properties at a more competitive auction, you're going to bid it down to lower than 14%.
Well, I just see there are a lot of
people
investors.
Bid these down to 1%.
Yeah,
some auctions.
Yeah. There are a lot of investors, pulling their hair out, trying to earn high interest returns, and
fighting at the auctions to get it.
Yeah, when there are a lot of them that are just sitting there.
Yeah, in fact, we were kind of talking a little bit about with the coaching students during the group coaching call about being either location based or opportunity based.
Yeah.
Where you're trying to buy in a certain location and you're sticking to that location versus just being to open opportunities.
Yeah, it's really two fundamental different approaches to getting started or to investing, really. They're going to be dependent upon what your objectives really are, and I think what you're trying to accomplish here. But what it really comes down to is you can either go for a location-based search, because it's really about obtaining a list. And so when it comes to searching for a list, we can either go with a location-based search or we can go with an opportunity-based search. And if it's location-based, then obviously we don't have everything to choose from around the country. We have to dig in and find the opportunities where they're at. And so if there's not a sale happening right now in that area, then we need to watch for it and prepare for the next one that comes up. We need to look for any over-the-counter inventory that they might have available and search through counties to find it. But we're basically trying to find the opportunities in a certain area, and so that's going to take more patience. But at the same time, though, it's also a route that people a lot of times take when they're trying to buy property with improvements.
Yeah.
At least if they're buying there in their own local area, unless they've got something set up with somebody and they're buying somewhere else. But or maybe they have a specific purpose in why they need to get property in this area, which is totally okay. I mean, it gives you a definite purpose and an objective. But the other option is, for those that don't have a certain area, it's more of an opportunistic approach, opportunity-based approach, where you're basically trying to go where the best opportunities are here in the beginning, and that can be a matter of, well, really, there are good opportunities in a lot of places. Good opportunities in over-the-counter lists, maybe in auctions, but you can kind of cherry pick that as you want if you're going with a more opportunistic approach.
Yeah, when you're looking over the counters, we're really looking at it, and you want to think about it almost like a treasure hunt, where you are going out and looking for this special deal. I don't know.
It's a little bit like mining gold.
Yeah, I mean, we all probably have different things that we like to do, but let's say some of you like to go and get a special deal or whatever it is. Everyone loves to be able to find that special deal, and that's kind of what we're doing, is we're going through and looking for these lists. We're looking for those diamonds in the rough, those properties that we can pick up for, anywhere from $1,000 to 15, 20 cents on the dollar, usually under 10 cents on the dollar if we're looking at deeds, or a double-digit return if we're looking at liens, where we can go ahead and pick it up over the counter without the hassle of attending the auction or, participating.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's the states that essentially offer over-the-counter tax liens.
Yeah. In fact, we've got some of the states here for over-the-counter tax liens, and I think this is growing. We're finding more of them there. Seems like we've got new ones adding online auctions.
Yeah, there's
here.
Actually quite a bit more deeds that are available over the counter than lien states.
Yeah,
lien states, we really are kind of limited.
Yeah, well, because we have a lot of even the lien states that are almost like deeds.
Yeah, well, like Mississippi is a lien state, but they don't offer. I guess we could. Well, Indiana offers liens, but then they sell them into deeds. So there's a lot of states, tax lien states, where they're switching over and kind of
pursuing deeds.
Pursuing deeds or holding onto the tax liens and turning them into deeds.
Yeah, well, really at some point, on the properties, if the property's got to be foreclosed on, you definitely want to have somebody that's going to do it.
Yeah.
Because that's where they run into problems.
One other thing to quick mention on liens before we flip over is, if you're going to be investing in liens, the best time is going to be after the auction. So right now, you can find some good stuff in Florida, but if you're going to like the major counties, especially ones that are selling them online, those online lists have been picked over for the last year, and so they're going to be pretty thin.
Yeah, there's nothing really left on them except for.
Yeah, I mean, we have this file where we had some liens in Duval County that we had researched right after the sale at Duval, and there were some nice liens on the homes, really nice. And but all of those liens have been sold. In fact, we went through it just to kind of update it, and every one of those liens had been sold. Yeah, there were those good liens, and they're going to sell within a couple of weeks to a month or two after the auction date is when the best liens are going to sell.
Yeah, well, and they sell that fast because people buy them up like they're no-brainers.
Banks will go in and spend $1 million.
Yeah, because they are no-brainers. When you consider that you're paying this little amount of property taxes, a $1,500 bill for a house that's worth $150,000. It's such a no-brainer, and results in redemption so often that they get bought up, I think.
Iowa has over-the-counter tax liens. It's actually a state we've never, we've had students buy at the auction before, but there's over-the-counter tax liens there that very few people are looking at.
Yeah, over-the-counter tax deeds are something that have always fascinated me, because it was always fascinating to me that there could be property offered up at really low prices, and that even then it wouldn't get a buyer. And so it was just sitting there in the county's name, and that they would sell it for, the bare minimum of what was owed if you just were willing to pay it.
Yeah, exactly. And with over-the-counter tax deeds, kind of the same thing as well. If it is a competitive area dollar, there's people looking at those over-the-counter deeds. The best inventory is usually going to be posted directly after the auction, but there's going to be good inventory across the country. These are a couple of examples. Property on the right we bought at an auction that we could submit offers on property. So we submitted an offer for $500 on this lot, and we were able to win it. And I think it's actually worth 15 grand, not 25 grand. That's more the market value. But it had a $15,000 assessed value. Probably 25 market value. But we were able to pick it up for $500. Lot on the left was a commercial lot. It picked up in another state for $750. But it gives you kind of an idea of the different types of property that can be picked up through over-the-counter lists.
Well, and the types that we like to target if we can. When it comes to over-the-counter tax deeds and some things to consider, when you are buying over-the-counter tax deeds, again, we're dealing with a higher percentage of junk property, but those stick out, and the good properties are going to stand out, and that's what we're really looking for. Is we're looking for the properties that offer the greatest potential, that that work best with the concept of buy low, sell high. And you know, on top of that, you know, they give you a lot of options, and you have full ownership rights. But basically, when it comes to selling it, though, because you paid for it outright and you own it outright, you can sell it either outright, you know, or you can offer to sell it, you know, as the bank. You can basically offer financing on it, which is something that most people here probably never had. Maybe you've never offered financing to anybody before, but it's something you could easily begin doing with tax deed investing, because you can act as the bank, you know, with how, you know, with the way you're picking up these properties.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, there's a huge amount of opportunity. In fact, there's, like I mentioned, there's more over-the-counter deed opportunities than there ever even is liens, and there's more property. Like we mentioned, these different states that had liens are essentially turning these into deeds and making them available through deed sales or resales, or and so there's just a huge opportunity. There's, you know, never been more opportunity to purchase these type of properties, but also making it so much easier with the research, you know, having the ability to go online, having to be able to do a research online, you know, gives us a huge opportunity. You know, these here are the states that offer over-the-counter tax deeds. States that are underlined offered both liens and deeds, essentially. But you can see that there's quite a few different states here where there is over-the-counter deed type opportunities.
Yeah, well, and as we're looking at it here,
you know, and some may have a ton. You know, Kansas may only have 3 or 4 or 5 counties that offer over-the-counter tax deeds, where Michigan may have, you know, 50 different counties.
Yeah, yeah. You know, even from what we know with some of these counties already, you know, we know that some of these, and we know that some of the counties in Pennsylvania will accept offers, you know, or have, you know, set minimum bid amounts on their properties. Yeah, we know Michigan does resales and will sell the properties for pretty low amounts.
You know, Washington has kind of an interesting thing where it's been on the books so long, they keep dropping it down where you pay 25 cents on the assessed value, 10 cents of the assessed value.
It's from subsequent sales.
Yeah, West Virginia is an area that offers over-the-counter tax deeds that we haven't even got a chance to look into yet. I mean, we've looked through the website and read the state website, and they also will sell deeds because they offer liens and deeds. You know, Alabama kind of does the same thing as well.
Dig into that. That sounds interesting.
In fact, Alabama's a deed state. It's not listed here as well. They offer deeds as well, except for I don't think their foreclosure isn't quite the same, so it's not quite as sweet in Alabama deeds. But
yeah, well, you know, the ideal thing, I guess, whether it's self-executed or self-executing foreclosure, I'm not sure if. I mean, it seems like it's beneficial. It's being found in places where it's self-executing. You don't have to do anything, but at the same time, though, you know, there are a lot of places where you may need to do something, and there are a lot of opportunities there, and you wouldn't want to avoid the place just because it had a self-executing foreclosure.
No, not at all.
In fact, there are a ton of states there that we can take a look at. Over-the-counter redemption deeds. There aren't as many of these, but you know, where they exist, they're different.
Yeah, the primary state for redemption deeds, or at least over-the-counters, is going to be Texas. Georgia does offer some over-the-counter deeds in a few scenarios with property in some of the counties that have held them, but so they're really not a redemption deed because at that point the year's already passed. So Texas is kind of really the only state that offers, you know, redemption deeds where you have that redemption period attached to it still, if you're buying it, you know, after the auction. And like Shade mentioned earlier, when we were talking about the different names, they're going to usually be referred to as struck off. They can also term them as resell as well, where essentially it's the exact same thing. But these are available after the sale. You get that guaranteed 25% penalty. You know, you can buy them into the redemption period. The one thing about a state like Texas, if you're looking for these struck off properties, is if they're very good, they're probably going to sell pretty quickly. You know, we've seen some in there that look okay, but then there's some that, you know, are kind of in that underwater position where, you know, if you could buy them for a better price, it'd be great. And that's something as well that I've noticed is at least some of the counties say that they'll entertain offers. Now, we don't know if they'll accept those offers or if you can get them for cheaper, but you know, that could be something to investigate if you live within that area. If you're interested.
It shows a willingness anyway that is, you know, music to our ears compared to, you know, to the places that just have it set, you know, one way. I mean, like for instance, all the Florida counties.
Yeah.
You know, none of them would even consider, you know, reducing the property tax amount.
And it's probably because it's written there within the state law that they have to sell them for the back tax. But what happens is you'll get certain counties that have a backlog of property that could be usable. You know, maybe it's not very, very incredibly high value, or it could even have high value, but there's so much back taxes and fees on it that it doesn't make it sense for an investor to purchase it, especially if you're buying it without a warranty deed.
You know, that was really created in large part, I think, by the banks and by the financial institutions that are buying up the liens. You know, I mean, it could be private, you know, lien holders that buy their liens and then never pursue foreclosure, you know, but I kind of doubt that, you know, with as common as it is in Florida, it's almost like you know, it's the kind of problem that started 20 years ago and that is, you know, that we're, you know, dealing with the repercussions of today is what it feels like.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, Texas has a few different law firms that conduct their tax sales on a monthly basis. You know, it's also on these sites a lot of times where you can access the struck off lists.
Yeah, you know,
properties.
Texas is not necessarily the easiest system or the easiest state, but
you have to be there in person to buy.
Yeah, you know, unless you're doing the struck off thing. And, you know, they kind of got a little bit weird system where there's still this redemption period attached. But if you can get in a system where you're checking a number of counties after the auction each month to see if there's properties that were left over and see what's available, you know, I think you could find property over time. You know, and some counties are going to be more competitive than another county. There's one of the
we looked at recently.
I don't mind mentioning it, which is one of our coaching students, because it's not like they were going to be sending anyone there.
Yeah, we were looking at the Austin area, and it was more competitive than California. You know, in the nicer areas we've seen, at least for tax sale stuff, people were paying way too much there.
And part of that was because I think it is, compared to the other counties, there was a lot less properties available coming to sell. I was actually surprised. It seemed like most people actually paid their property taxes because there wasn't nearly as many. I mean, there was only 10 properties total for the whole county. I think 9, 8.
I could see there's a question here about Texas. So let's help clarify here a little bit on Texas with how it works. So they offer the property up like a deed. So you're buying the deed. But the property has a redemption period. If it's raw land, it's a 6-month redemption period, basically. If it's improved property, then it's 2 years. But it's a 25% annual flat penalty rate. Okay, so basically what that means is if you were to attend, let's say, a Texas auction, and you were to buy that property at the auction, let's say you buy property for $10,000 there at the auction, and it has a 6-month redemption period to it. What that would mean is in Texas, you could take actual possession of the property there. You could basically do what you want with it there, but the one thing you wouldn't be able to do is sell it during that time period because of this redemption period. So you basically wouldn't have the ability to sell it during that time period. And it really is kind of like a lien in that either the property owner somehow comes up with the money to pay it off, or they don't. But if they do pay it off within that time period, rather than it accruing monthly, you're just going to get a flat 25%, regardless of when it happens, even if that would be the day after you bought it. you're still going to get a flat 25% on your money if it redeems. If it doesn't, it's just like you bought a deed, but it took longer.
Yeah.
So I think in most cases in Texas, I don't think you would be normally looking at, well, I guess if you've had homestead property, there's a chance there to have multiple years at 25%.
Yeah, you're more likely to get the property than you get the interest. And really, Texas is going to be most successful if you're there in person attending auctions.
Yeah, they in fact, oh yeah, and the other question that we can see here is about the counties and the updating the list on their website after their latest auction date. And in fact, one of the things that you'll find with counties when they have an over-the-counter inventory is they will a lot of times they'll even announce exactly when they're going to be placing their over-the-counter inventory on their list, and they're generally going to try to keep that up pretty much updated regularly because that's what people are searching off of. And so
it kind of depends on how the list is
too.
Because we'll have a list that hasn't changed for 3 years. We go and download the same list. It's going to depend on the county
and how often they do sales.
Yeah.
If they do an annual sale, they might not ever update it. They might release a list one time if they just do an annual sale.
Yeah, so it'll kind of depend exactly on the type of state, the type of auction. If they do one sale, then usually, like for example, Florida will, if they have a tax lien sale, they'll usually say we'll have the over-the-counter list in the auction rules available 2 weeks after the sale or whatever.
Oh yeah, and the 25% penalty, by the way, is on what you paid. So you paid $10,000 for the property. If it redeems in that time, it means that you're going to get a check back for $12,500. If it's raw land that you purchased there, in that time period. That's part of the reason why it's more likely to end up in property acquisition in the end, is because if it was expensive before for the person to redeem it, then once there's like an additional flat 25% added on top of that, it's just that much more for them to redeem it. I mean, they've allowed it to go for a long time at that point. But it's still possible, that they could redeem it.
And 90% of the property are going to have the 6-month redemption period. Like none of the properties in Austin this last month were homestead properties.
Yeah.
The only ones that have a 2-year redemption period are homestead.
Yeah. Is it farmland too?
Yeah, well, in farmland, yeah. But even that's even more rare, where it's actually zoned, farmland that's going to sell.
Yeah. In fact,
what we could do is go to the website and at least kind of show all the different counties.
Yeah, let's do that here. Let me get this switched over here.
2 minutes left.
Okay, let's go. And let me get this part switched over here. Actually, you know what? Let's keep it like that. And I will just expand this out. Okay. So.
One thing we didn't talk about as well, which is an over-the-counter, is land banks. And in addition to regular over-the-counter sales, there's this new trend within some different states and areas in the country where counties or cities,
Well, it come up as a way for them to deal with their county-held inventory.
Yeah, their tax defaulted property. They could also have some donated property in some of them. And so they've set up these nonprofit organizations that are ran by the county or, kind of owned by the county or the city, where they offer these different types of properties available. Now, some of them...
and they are better at selling them than the county.
Yeah, some of them will be kind of targeted more to local investors, and then have some properties that just... I'm not local investors. Some will give special discounts, like you can buy a property for $1, but you have to essentially be owner occupied and fix the property up. Some will be more catering to investors and just want to get rid of property.
Yeah, and the list of land banks is constantly growing. I mean, it's crazy how fast it's been growing, and so many of them have been adopting it, because really what it allows them to do is, rather than worry about this old inventory of county held land they have, they can, hand it over to this land bank that can then actually, make the effort to sell the properties. They'll actually list the properties, and it'll have a lot of times current information about it. They'll even have some of them fixed up or have estimates ready on what's needed, and they can have a lot of detail on these properties sometimes.
Yeah, as you go through, and if you're looking at any of the land banks, be sure to review the rules and kind of how that land bank works and how they sell their property and how the offer process works, so you can get a good idea.
Yeah. In fact, you can always download lists as well. If
they're available. Some of the land banks are online lists.
Yeah. In fact, I'm thinking here. Maybe I don't know, see, Indianapolis has got anything. Let's see.
Yeah, a lot of these are set to try to renew the city and to, take blighted properties and put them back under the roll.
Oh, so here's two different ways that we can search properties. We can download a complete list. We can also do a searchable map page, so we can see there. We can browse the properties. This is maybe just a list of them.
A lot of them actually use some of these online maps and some of these same systems to show the property. So some will be on a map that you can actually look at all the different properties available.
Yeah, so this is Indianapolis, and really some of these are not too bad. I mean, they're not quite tax sale cheap, but I guarantee they're still cheap for that area. Probably really cheap.
Well, and they might be in better condition.
Some of these,
like say you're spending $12,000 on that home right there. Well, that home, condition-wise, even if you got it for $6,000, it's in better condition.
Yeah, interesting. That one, I wouldn't be surprised if the other one, let's see.
Well, that one.
Oh yeah, let's do that one, 12,000. And see, so they've got a whole bunch of images of the of these properties too. Which, again, if you were buying a property with improvements, this is one of those ways that you could do it, because you basically have like a sales agent on the other end of the line there that can get you information.
And you can see underneath here, eligible sale program. They have homestead, but then also standard, and that standard may be investor, I would think. Homestead would be kind of owner occupied, I would think.
Yeah, so let's see if we can.
But one thing that Shade mentioned is that they can include a lot more photos, so you can get inside photos. They can have, estimates on repairs. They can give you a better idea.
That one's still full.
Yeah. Gonna be taking a couple of dump loads for sure.
Yeah, but for $12,000, that would be it.
And that's something that we will deal with when we're buying a tax sale property, and that's something we should probably kind of bring up as we're looking at structured properties with stuff in it. If you buy a property and there's personal items within the property, and let's say the property owner, the property was vacant or whatever, you go in and there's a ton of stuff within the property. If it's junk, essentially you can throw it away. But if there's stuff of value, what you're essentially supposed to do is notify the last owner and give them, a period of time, 2 weeks or whatever, to essentially remove the items before getting rid of them or selling them or doing whatever you need to do with them.
Yeah.
But if there is, let's say that you go there's a couple of four-wheelers in the garage or something like that, essentially before just taking them, we've got to notify the owner, give them a time to retrieve the items before essentially getting rid of them or selling them.
But after that, they're all yours. Yeah, we at least do have a lot of images here, and let's see here. Now they actually have a lot. Let's see, that's not too bad. I think also what we've noticed with land banks is that they, there's a couple different ways that they approach it. A lot of them try to focus on the structured properties that have the most potential, and so they can get people in there. But we've also seen them offering raw land, in a lot of cases. And so
these are probably
you can find
these
both.
are probably just the
Yeah,
highlighted properties or something.
Yeah, that is probably true. Yeah, it's interesting though. I mean, none of these. Ooh,
got some serious work.
Yeah, I've got some problems there. But the tax amounts, anyways, aren't overly crazy for these being probably old properties that have been sitting on the books for a while. And there are practically hundreds.
You look at all the Michigan ones.
Yeah.
On the city level, even.
Yeah.
Or county level. I mean, in addition to the big ones they have. But there's certain areas too that like go up here real quick and look at Maryland. We don't have to go on it, but Maryland's a tax lien state. They don't sell real estate there, deed wise. But here's opportunity. I don't know if there's anything good, but there's the Baltimore City Housing Department, Housing Authority, that essentially does kind of the same type of thing, and they get rid of these tax defaulted properties and different type of properties as well.
Interesting. I wonder if they.
Well, I just more of using kind of an example of a tax lien state.
Oh, yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah, they're. I'm thinking of any of these. I think we've looked at some of Georgia's before.
Well, let's go ahead and take a look. We just got a couple minutes left. We can look at the tax deeds and lien list as well and kind of show how we've got that breaking down too.
Yeah, for over-the-counter online auctions.
Over-the-counter tax deeds or liens.
Yeah, so for over-the-counter, basically with all of the lists, we have them split up according to the buying methods being used. We also have them split up according to to what's being sold. So whether it's a tax lien, a tax deed, a redemption deed, and so from there they're divided according to states. So you can always access it here if you want to locate the upcoming online auctions for whatever it is.
These are the over-the-counters, yeah, but.
Oh yeah, sorry, over-the-counter. So if we wanted to look at the over-the-counter deeds here for any of the states that have it available here, in fact.
Yeah, you can see we could explain, give a quick overview of how the tax deeds work there, and then we'll also provide the list, but also link if it's an online list. So here's, if they do it through the Department of Revenue, we can go ahead and click on that link that would take us to the Department of Revenue where they auction off where they offer the delinquent tax sale properties.
Yeah.
So we're going to provide the list, but then we'll also provide you where you can go ahead and look at a possibly online list, which is maybe better to look at versus a hard copy list anyway.
Yeah, totally. In fact, you can basically pull it up from here, and take a look at everything they've got available, because they also in Alabama have, a universal website. This is a site that handles their delinquent property taxes.
Yeah, or if we are looking in tax liens on the website, and let's say, like in Florida, there's some counties that sell their over-the-counters online. We'll have all those websites listed. So when you go to the over-the-counter section, we'll kind of explain how it works, has the list available. But one thing also to mention is, regardless of when you get that list, you're always going to want to, once you get that list, that's really just kind of a starting point. You're always going to want to take that list and go back to the county website and see if you can find an updated list. Look for the county parcel search tool. Look for any information that they may have on their county website about the tax sale, about submitting offers on over-the-counter property. We essentially want to say, okay, here's a tax sale list. Look through the list. Okay, it looks like there's a bunch of properties, or this list looks good. Then from there, go see, if we can find the list, if there's a newer list, if it's been updated, if there's anything that have sold since the list was gotten. And then, of course, also at that point, looking to see any information that could be important about us actually submitting an offer on that property.
Yeah. I think that's pretty much everything here for tonight. Let me just check here. Yeah, and by the way, it is kind of true. Well, when we first got started, we thought Florida was the state that was just on the ball, and they really are, on the ball and have kind of been at the forefront, I think. But there have been really a lot of states now, I think, are waking up to it. It's great to see. We're seeing much more proactive, county governments than we were seeing 20 years ago.
Yeah. Well, Florida's still ahead of the game in a lot of things, like online auctions, even their online tax lien sales and their tax deed sales. They've kind of led the country. There's a few things like they're, not accepting lower than taxes,
but they don't have to.
But most of them sell at auction. So there's really not very many good over-the-counter tax deeds in Florida. If you really want Florida deeds, you best get them at auction.
Yeah. Let's see here. Oh yeah, so yeah, there are some areas where when you go to submit offers, like for instance, Michigan, did this where, a lot of times what they want to know is what you intend to do with the property, and trying to think here if they wanted you to it has when they say they want to have some kind of community benefit, what they're worried about is that they're going to sell the property for cheap, and that that's how they're going to end up with a bunch of properties that sit and that boarded up houses. I mean, that's what a lot of these cities are afraid of, is that somebody's going to buy the property and not do anything with it. So one of the best ways to alleviate this fear with them is to kind of give them a layout of what it is that you do and what your plans are with the property. Because in reality, we're just middlemen, but we can do something that the county actually does need help with, and that is getting these properties into the hands of the final buyers, that will own the properties and will continually pay property taxes. We're going to pay the property taxes until it's completely paid for, and so we are the current owner of it. But all we really need to let them know is how we what it is that we do. We tend to buy property, offer it for a low, for a discounted price to people, pass the savings on.
Even that's rare.
Mm-hmm.
Most states don't care. I mean, when we're doing an offer, they're not, when we bought,
I think our sound just cut off for a second.
In Mississippi, essentially, we did the offer. They accepted the offer. We didn't even have to really explain what we were doing. So it'll kind of depend. The land banks may want more of an explanation than just a county where you're buying it off the over-the-counter list.
Yeah. So, hey, thank you everybody for joining us tonight, and we'll talk to you soon.
Yep. Thank you.